Level 1. The Hangaround. You're 22, working a warehouse shift and riding a used Sportster you bought off a guy who needed rent money. You started showing up at the clubhouse because a coworker's cousin knew somebody. Nobody officially invited you. You just kept coming back and nobody told you to stop. You buy the first round more nights than not. You wash bikes in the parking lot without being asked. You listen more than you talk. The members size you up without ever saying so out loud. How you handle a beer, how you handle an insult, whether you flinch when things get loud. You don't have a cut. You don't have a name anyone bothers learning yet. You're just a guy who's around. You tell yourself this is temporary, that you're just seeing what it's like. You already know that's not true. You've started structuring your weekends around clubhouse nights. Your girlfriend asks why you're never home on Fridays. You don't have a good answer. You just know that when you're there, something in your chest finally sits still. Level 2. The Prospect. 18 months of hanging around earns you a probationary patch, bottom rocker only, no center patch yet, the mark of someone still being tested. You're 24 now. Your bike is nicer. Your bank account is worse. Prospecting means you're the errand boy for a dozen men twice your age. You run to get cigarettes at 2 a.m. You stand guard outside a clubhouse party while everyone else drinks. You get woken up at 4 a.m. to help a member move a truck nobody explains the contents of. You don't ask. Asking is a mistake prospects make exactly once. You get hazed not viciously but constantly, a running test of whether you'll stay useful without getting resentful. You miss 2 family functions for club business you can't discuss. Your girlfriend leaves. You tell yourself the club will be worth it. Some nights you believe that. Other nights you're changing a member's oil at midnight wondering what exactly you're proving and to whom. You keep your mouth shut and your jacket clean. You know one bad night, one loose word, one failed test, and 18 months evaporates. Level 3. The Patched Member. You're voted in. Full patch, top rocker, center patch, bottom rocker, the 3-piece that means something on every street in 3 states. You're 26. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it didn't need to be. 1 no vote among 30 is still a yes. You get your first real bike, a stripped-down Harley you'll spend the next decade modifying. You ride in formation for the first time, and the sound of 40 engines moving together does something to you no other sound ever has. You have brothers now, men who will show up at 3 a.m. for a fight that isn't yours, no questions asked, because that's the deal. The deal cuts both ways. You get called on a run with 2 hours notice and you go because that's what the patch means. You start understanding the difference between the club as brotherhood and the club as business, the dues, the runs that aren't really about riding, the favors that get called in from people who aren't members but owe the club anyway. You don't ask too many questions about that side of it. You are the patch. The patch protects you and it also owns a piece of you now. Level 4. The Road Captain. 4 years in, you're given a title, Road Captain, responsible for planning every run, mapping every route, scouting every gas stop and rest point for 40 bikes at a time. You're 30. The job sounds simple. It isn't. You're responsible for the club's safety and reputation on every mile of asphalt, which means you're the one blamed when a run goes sideways, a bad route through rival territory, a police checkpoint nobody warned you about, a member laid up in a hospital because you missed a pothole in the plan. You start carrying a second phone, one that only talks to other road captains from clubs you're allied with, coordinating territory and courtesy passes so 2 clubs don't end up on the same stretch of highway the same weekend. You learn the unwritten map of the country, which roads belong to which patch, which counties have sheriffs who look the other way, which ones don't. You take pride in the job most members don't want. Being trusted with the club's safety means something. It also means every mistake is yours alone. Level 5. The Sergeant at Arms. 6 years in, you're handed the job nobody envies and everybody respects, Sergeant at Arms, responsible for discipline, security, and enforcement inside the club. You're 32. You settle disputes between members before they turn into something worse. You collect dues from guys who'd rather not pay. You handle the clubhouse door on nights when trouble is a real possibility, not a hypothetical one. You carry weight now, literal and otherwise, a firearm you're licensed for, and a reputation that walks into a room before you do. You've had to discipline a brother for something the club doesn't discuss outside its own walls, and you did it because the bylaws are the bylaws and someone has to enforce them or the whole structure means nothing. You sleep less. You watch doors and exits out of habit now, even at your own kitchen table. The club calls you when things go wrong, and things go wrong more often at this level than any other. You've learned that respect and fear aren't the same thing, but from the outside they look identical. Level 6. The Treasurer. 9 years in, you take over the club's finances, dues, clubhouse rent, run funds, the merchandise table, the funeral fund every member pays into without complaint. You're 35. The books have to balance publicly and privately at the same time. Club finances get audited by nobody official, but everybody unofficial, 30 pairs of eyes that all think they know how the money should move. You learn to say no to members who want an advance. You learn to say yes to the widow of a brother who died on a run 4 years before you patched in, because the fund exists for exactly that, and because you understand now what the club actually is underneath the leather and the noise insurance policy against a world that doesn't look out for men like you otherwise. You handle cash that changes hands at events in ways you don't examine too closely. You keep 2 sets of mental notes. What you'd say to a member who asked and what you actually know. The gap between those 2 things grows every year you hold this job. Level 7. The Vice President. 12 years in, you're voted VP of your chapter. You're 38. You run meetings when the president's away. You settle disputes he doesn't have time for. You're the buffer between the club floor and club leadership, which means everyone's complaints land on you first. You learn to read a room of 40 bikers the way a foreman reads a job site who's about to blow up, who's quietly furious, who needs 5 minutes alone before a vote goes sideways. You start attending meetings with officers from allied clubs, negotiating territory, negotiating peace, occasionally negotiating something closer to a truce after a bad incident nobody wants repeated. Your name starts appearing in ways you didn't choose, in a police file somewhere, in a rival club's conversation, in the quiet respect of strangers at gas stations who see your patch and step back half a foot. You have a family now, and you've learned to keep 2 lives running in parallel, one that knows everything and one that knows nothing, and the discipline required to keep that line clean is exhausting in a way nobody warns you about. Level 8. The President. 16 years in, you're voted president of your chapter. You're 42. Every decision that used to be someone else's problem is now yours. Who patches in, who gets expelled, which runs happen, which alliances hold, which don't. You represent the chapter to the national organization, to allied clubs, to the town that's learned to live alongside your clubhouse for 2 decades. You've buried 6 brothers in your time wearing a cut, and you speak at every funeral now because that job falls to you too. You carry the weight of 40 families' stability, not just 40 riders. The club owns property now, the clubhouse, a garage, a stake in a bar 2 towns over, and all of it runs through decisions you make or approve. Law enforcement knows your name. So does the mayor's office, in a way neither of you says out loud. You've learned that leading men who chose this life for freedom means leading without looking like you're leading, guiding 30 strong personalities toward decisions they believe they made themselves. The vest is heavier than it was the day you first put it on, though it weighs exactly the same. Level 9. The National Officer. 22 years in, you sit on the club's National Council, one of a handful of men responsible for the organization across every chapter in the country. You're 48. You fly more than you ride now, which feels like its own kind of loss. You mediate disputes between chapters hundreds of miles apart, chapters that have never met each other but wear the same patch and answer to the same bylaws you helped rewrite twice. You've watched 3 club presidents get indicted over the decades, and you've learned exactly how much daylight to keep between the brotherhood you believe in and the parts of the world that attach themselves to any organization built on loyalty and silence. You carry a different kind of authority now, quieter, further from the road, closer to boardrooms than bar fights. Younger members you've never personally met know your name and stand a little straighter when you walk into their clubhouse. You think about the kid who bought his first Sportster off a stranger for rent money, and you barely recognize him anymore, though you still ride the same roads he did when your knees allow it. Level 10. The legend. You're 68. You haven't held office in 15 years, but you still wear the cut, still ride when your body lets you, still sit at the head of the table on nights that matter. Younger members call you by a road name most of them don't know the origin of. You've outlived the club's original clubhouse, its original charter, half its founding members. You've buried more brothers than you can count on both hands, and you've watched the organization survive federal investigations, internal splits, and the slow attrition of age that no amount of loyalty stops. You tell stories at the clubhouse bar that get a little larger every year, and everyone lets you because you earned that. Somewhere in the club's history is a version of you nobody remembers anymore, a nervous kid washing bikes in a parking lot, buying rounds he couldn't afford, waiting to be noticed. Tonight, at the far end of the lot, a kid on a used Sportster is doing exactly that, wiping down a bike that isn't his yet in every way that matters, hoping someone looks over and remembers his name. Someone will, eventually. That's how it always starts.